Hi everyone, thanks for watching. Today we're going to be making a cold processed soap with breast milk from scratch. We will be incorporating lye. If you're not familiar with that, you might want to do a little bit of research. The first step though is to make sure that when you are using the breast milk that you are mixing the milk fully so it doesn't have that fatty layer of milk on the top. I have a couple other breast milk recipes on my channel, and I probably will upload a few more if you're interested in that. Don't forget to like and subscribe. So let's get started. The first step would be to measure out the breast milk itself. Like I said, make sure everything's mixed well. I like to actually freeze my milk when I incorporate it into soap just because the lye will tend to heat up the milk, and you don't want to scorch your milk when you're making something like breast milk, or if you're incorporating it with a different type of milk, you can sub the milks out if you're interested in just doing a regular milk soap. I'm also going to be trying to answer some of the questions that I got on my other video when I made breast milk soap, because there was a lot of confusion, a lot of questions. So if you want to watch the whole video, I'll try to go over some of those as we go through things. So this is going to be slow paced. I'm going to try to give as much information as I can. So again, first step, we're just measuring out the milk. We're putting it into a silicone mold. I'm going to let this sit in the freezer. Probably, I think it freezes in about 4 hours. You can wait a little bit longer if you want to wait a full 24 hours, or just freeze this and then set it aside, and when you're ready to make soap, go ahead and use it later. That's kind of what I do. I just measure it out, and then I put it in baggies and I store it in the freezer. You can store breast milk up in the freezer for about 6 months. After that, it starts to get kind of bad, so this is a good thing too if you have breast milk that you have like an oversupply and you've been storing and you want to use it in soap or something. This is a good way to incorporate that so you're not wasting soap, and that's part of the reason why I did this myself. I would have extra milk and I didn't know what to do with it, so I started freezing some of it, and that way I can make milk soap and it leaves the skin a little bit softer. You can use this on a baby if you want. There are some ingredients that I'll show here in a minute. I would advise not using those if you're going to do that. That is totally a personal choice. I personally just make this for myself. The last time I made it, I did make it for my daughter. I waited till she was about 6 to 8 months before I started using it on her, and she never had any issues with it irritating her skin. However, you are using lye, so you do want to make sure you are aware that that will burn your eyes if it gets in your eyes. Something to keep in mind for babies. This soap, I'm using a fragrance from Wholesale Supplies Plus. Again, if you're using this for yourself, go ahead and add a fragrance oil. If you're not, if you want to use it for the baby, it's best to leave fragrance out, or you can lightly scent it with an essential oil. For this particular recipe and the fragrance oil that I'm using, I'm going to use about 2 ounces. You also want to keep your fragrance oil, if you set it aside and measure it ahead of time, in a glass container, because some fragrance oils can seep through plastic containers, so that's just something to keep in mind. And it does measure out to be about 4 tablespoons. So it's going to depend on the fragrance oil how much you use, but that's just some guides or tips. This is also, if you're measuring out your lye solution, you want a number 5 container that won't melt the plastic if you're new to making soap this way. I would also recommend that you do a lot of research on how to use lye and safety tips and stuff like that as well. This is also another optional step. I'm just adding some colorant. You don't have to do that, but again, since I'm doing this for my own personal use and I'm going to use it, I wanted to test this fragrance oil out and see how it would react to colors and stuff like that. So I'm just using Love and Sunshine from Nurture Soap. Again, totally don't have to do that. It's just an optional thing. I'm also going to use a little bit of kaolin clay. This is also optional. You don't have to put this into your soap. This helps anchor the fragrance oil if you're putting it in there, and it also has a lot of benefits for your skin. It works well in like a lot of bath bombs or other bath and body products, soaps and stuff like that. It just kind of makes everything smooth. It's a light exfoliant. When you put it into your soap though, you are going to want to put just a little bit of water and kind of mix it up. I typically let this sit aside for about 30 minutes to an hour. You can let it sit a little bit longer. The reason why you add the water to the clay though is just so that it's not taking from the solution of oils and stuff that we're measuring out further on in the recipe. Now we're going to start measuring out. Everything from here on out is actual stuff that you for sure need in your recipe. The first thing that you are going to need is lye. One of the questions in my other video is what type of lye. You want sodium hydroxide, either flakes or pellets. That is for cold processed soap. There is another lye that's called potassium hydroxide. Those are for liquid soap. So if you use the other kind of lye, it will not work. Your solution won't, come together. You'll just have a mess. So again, sodium hydroxide flakes. Also, you probably want to watch a few videos. I don't have any on my channel about lye safety. It is caustic. It can burn your skin. There's no lye left over in the soap once it's made. That's a common misconception. Once the soap is fully cured, it's fully safe for your skin. It won't hurt you as long as the recipe is balanced. So again, you can find lye at some of your hardware stores, or you can find it on a reputable soap supplier. I like to buy mine from Wholesale Supplies Plus. I've got this other one from Amazon. You kind of want to make sure it doesn't get the chunks. That's kind of bad. That means the lye is getting too much moisture. So if you do have that, you do need to break it down and be careful when you're measuring it. Sometimes I just throw away the lye when it's like that. But again, this is for personal use. I know what's acceptable and not. So if it's your first time, kind of be cautious of those things. Okay, now that we have our lye measured out, we are going to take some of those breast milk ice cubes that we made, and we're just going to slowly start incorporating the lye into the milk portion. You don't have to freeze the breast milk if you don't want to. You can use it warm. Again, the only reason we're doing this is to keep the temperatures really low. So you just want to add like a spoon or two at a time, slowly mix it in. Let the lye sort of melt the cubes. It's going to take a while. I would say mixing all of this together from start to finish takes anywhere from like, I would say 5 minutes to about 10 to 15 minutes. Just depends on if you're like just doing this or coming back. Like I come back every once in a while and then I continue stirring. Some things you want to look for when you're stirring is you want to make sure that the cubes are staying, as close as you can to this color. Same if you're using milk that's fresh and not frozen. If your milk starts turning brown, you are getting it too hot. I have a temp gun that I use. You probably want to keep it the closest you can keep it under, I would say 100 degrees, the better. If you can keep it as low as like 70 degrees, that's awesome. That way you know for sure you're not scorching your milk and you're not ruining any of the properties that are inside the milk. So just take your time with this step. I know it's a lot of work. It's a little bit tedious, but like I said, you can sort of mix it a little bit and then come back, and you just want to do 1 or 2 spoons at a time. One other thing that I do want to mention is when you're mixing it like this, you need to make sure that all of the lye chunks are fully incorporated. So you will be mixing even a while after all the cubes are melted. Just continue mixing for about another 1 to 2 minutes. Again, the reason you're doing that is just to make sure all those lye pieces are incorporated. You don't want any huge chunks in your soap. Another tip that you can do is when you're actually pouring the lye solution, so this milk and the lye together, in with the oils, you can use a strainer to kind of filter out some of these big chunks in case something didn't get mixed all the way in, because you don't want to burn your skin. That is important. But again, see, I'm trying to keep it as close as I can to 70 degrees. The milk is a nice white color. If it starts to get too hot, it will get yellow. So just, again, keep an eye on that. You don't need a temp gun. You can usually feel the side of the container and tell if it's getting too hot, or visually see that it's getting too hot. So the next part, we're going to just be mixing all of the oils, and you're going to put all your oils into like a big pot or something that you can mix everything into. So just measure everything out. You're using fluid ounces, so you do need kind of a scale for that. You can convert this to grams or whatever you want to do. I don't have that in here, but if you want to convert to a different measuring unit, that's fine. Just make sure that you're actually using fluid weight, not net weight. There is a difference in those things. In this recipe, I'm using coconut oil, and it is a hard oil. Anything that you have that is a hard oil, you will need to melt it down. I melt mine down in a double boiler. You can melt it down in the microwave if you feel more comfortable doing that, but you just want to keep the temperatures really low on that too. You don't want to scorch your oils, so a double boiler is the best way to go. If you're doing a microwave, just do little 30-second bursts until all the oils and butters are completely liquid form. You need to have it that way just so it doesn't, have any issues when you're mixing all the oils and butters together with the lye solution. You want to make sure everything is fully balanced and blended well. Now that we've moved on to measuring everything out, all of the oils are melted down, as you can see in this pot. That is actually a little bit of clay I put in there, that clay that I had set aside. You can go ahead and add the milk or the lye water solution, we'll call it, to the pot. Now, somebody asked in my last video, what temperature do I do this at? As long as you are at or around 110 degrees and your oils are within about 10 degrees of your lye solution, that's a good starting point. You can mix it a little bit higher than that if you want. It's going to get to trace a lot quicker, so that's something to keep in mind. Or you could just do it at room temperature, which is what I do. I've been soaping so long, I don't actually use my temp gun that often anymore. So you're just going to want to mix this, and I would say anywhere from, it depends on the temperature of your soap, but anywhere from like 2 minutes to 10 minutes. You are going to see when the soap gets to a light trace, it's going to be kind of like a pudding consistency. That is the consistency you're looking for. If you're still confused on that or have questions, I would suggest watching a few other cold process soap videos, and one specifically that tell you how to get to trace. And see, I'm kind of taking my little mixer there, and I'm taking the soap and seeing if it like has a light, what do you call it, like a pattern on top of the soap, so you can actually see it. I'm also banging my container down to help get the air bubbles out of the soap itself. Once I can tell that the soap is fully mixed, I'm going to go ahead and put it into my soap mold. I went ahead though and saved a little bit of that yellow on the side, like I said, to just kind of test the colors, see what's going on with the soap. So I poured a little bit of that off into a separate container. This won't normally happen if you don't use a fragrance oil. My batter started to kind of like seize up on me a little bit or accelerate. If you're familiar with soap making, you know exactly what that means. If you're not, you might want to do your own research on it. But basically, this soap batter starts setting up really quickly. If you're new to soap making, don't worry. You just got to keep moving fast. And nothing's wrong with your soap itself. It will still come out okay. It's just a matter of getting it all into the soap mold before it gets too hard to work with. So if you are interested in the fragrance oil that I was using in this video, just keep in mind if you use it, it will kind of accelerate on you. And the reason I think that is because it's a floral scent. The scent, by the way, from Wholesale Supplies Plus, I'm glad I got a 4-ounce bottle. I normally just get 2-ounce bottles, but it smells so delightful. It's really clean, it's fresh, it's fruity. It's definitely, I would say, a girly sort of smell. It's not what I was expecting it to come out, but I really like it. It's holding up in my cold process soap. It's been curing for about, I would say, 2.5 weeks since I've started it, and the soap fragrance is still holding up really well. So I'm just kind of mixing in the different layers on this, if you can see, and the only issue that I had with this is since the batter was getting so thick, I did have a lot of air pockets in my finalized soap. But again, it's nothing wrong with the soap. It's fully cosmetic. It didn't have any issues. If I didn't use the fragrance oil at all, this would be a nice, like, kind of almost white or creamy color looking soap right now. It might have a slight tint of yellow hue to it just because of like the olive oil and stuff was like a little bit higher content. But for the most part, it should be white if you're making the soap and not using that fragrance oil. Now for the last part of this, what you're going to do is you're going to let the soap mold that you have kind of sit for about 24 to 48 hours, and then once it has been sitting for a while, it should come nice and clean out of your soap mold. Silicone soap molds do take a little bit longer for the soap to actually cure and come out, so if it starts coming apart, don't worry, you did not do anything wrong. You just probably need to let it sit in your mold a little bit longer. So this is what it looks like after about, I would say, I think I waited about 2 days, and it came out really nice. Again, you can see all the air pockets. You can see the yellow layer that I put in there. So it's just nice looking right now. I was hoping it would stay closer to this color, but the fragrance oil that I had, it actually discolored to a very, very dark brown, and you can kind of tell on some of the places where there's air pockets that it looks a little bit darker. I was a little bit worried when I first cut this because I thought maybe something wasn't right and it wasn't balanced. That's why I waited a while to upload this video, because I wanted to make sure that it was actually the fragrance oil doing the discoloration, and it was. So if you guys like watching this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, like, subscribe. I will try to put more breast milk recipes up here if it's something you guys want. Leave a comment below if there's certain ingredients you want me to add, or if you have questions about it. I'm also planning on putting one up of a melt and pour sort of experiment with breast milk soap. I know it's not something that people commonly do, but if you'd rather do that option and not use the lye, I totally understand. That's why I'm going to see what I can come up with and see if I could get something to work. So thank you guys for joining, and I will be uploading more videos like this soon. And like I said, if you have any questions, just leave them a comment. And this is the soap after it's been curing for about 2 weeks. You can tell that it's a really dark brown.